like my best animated feature winner ranking. And yeah, that's my personal favorite video of mine. So I figured, let's do it again. But this time with Disney movies, specifically the ones that came out during the Renaissance, all the way from Little Mermaid to Tarzan. These are low-key some of my all-time favorites, so ranking them was a bit of a challenge. But after much uncertainty and going back and forth in the ranking, this is the list I finally came up with. Feel free to disagree with me as long as you're respectful of my opinion. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Every Disney Renaissance movie ranked from the worst to the best. Let's begin.
Endless trash!
Pocahontas is mediocre. I found this movie kind of boring as a kid, and it has not gotten better with time. I mean, it's got good stuff. The songs are solid as usual. Colors of the Wind is a real standout, and I get a lot of ironic enjoyment from Mine, Mine, Mine. Meeko is cute. Despite that, the movie is stunningly non-self-aware. I don't find it offensive how it tries to both sides the issue of white colonists forcing the Native Americans off their land, but I just think the historical inaccuracy doesn't mesh well with the serious tone. The reason why Hercules worked so well was because you got to enjoy it for what it was. It's not accurate to Greek mythology, but it's a comedy that you enjoy for the laughs, so for me, the accuracy doesn't matter as long as it makes up for it by being entertaining. But with this movie, it just feels like Disney wanted to make a profound story, but didn't go all the way because they didn't want to make it too dark, so they put traces of the original story, but decided to sugarcoat it because we can't make it too dark, we need the kids to watch it. Bottom line is, every character is kind of boring. Every scene that isn't a musical number is at least somewhat boring. The villain is a complete and utter joke. Pocahontas and John Smith can magically communicate with each other. No, that's not even an exaggeration. It's literally some forest magic that gives them a special heart listening technique. Why? The tree can talk? Okay, sure. Why does Mel Gibson voice John Smith? His voice sticks out like a sore thumb. Maybe because he's not doing a British accent like all the other characters who came from Britain. Oh God, why am I talking about this movie? It's mediocre. You know it's mediocre. Just watch Colors on the Wind on YouTube and pretend it's a short film. Okay, moving on.
Helicopter, helicopter!
An interesting thing about The Rescuers Down Under is that it doesn't really feel like it's part of the Disney Renaissance. Now, I know that a lot of Disney eras have leftovers, movies that are sequels to movies from other eras that are meant to spice things up, meaning that the current era is going in one direction, but another movie is kind of like a one-off blast from the past. The thing is, there's a right and wrong way to do that. I'm all for respecting old stuff in terms of vibe, but a lot of movies can create a balance. That's what I always say is great about movies. Balance, where you can uphold both sides. Most of these movies, where despite being sequels to classic Disney movies, blend in and have a tone that takes the vibe of the original movie and pays respect to it, but also marries it to the vibe of the new era. Now, I haven't seen Winnie the Pooh 2011, but I assume it's good, because even if it doesn't fit into the 3D style Disney was doing then, sometimes a group of characters and a world is so charming and endearing that I'll take it under any circumstances. It might not fit in, but I can't possibly imagine butchering Winnie the Pooh. Then there's Fantasia 2000, which is also from another time, but it still manages to feel relevant because it's an update and it doesn't feel archaic. It has new concepts and ideas. So while structurally and conceptually it feels like the original Fantasia, it still feels like an adaptation that fits into the era it came out in due to the new segments and the new styles and even the new types of music they incorporate. Rescuers Down Under does not do that. It is a leftover from a bygone era of Disney films that I have not seen and have no interest in seeing. I watched it for this ranking and it's fine. I like a few things, mainly the villain. He's pretty funny and menacing. I like that sequence with the eagle at the beginning. It's real pretty. The bird is pretty okay. I guess the mice are okay despite having barely any screen time. Like, seriously, what's the deal there? Isn't this movie called The Rescuers Down Under? Aren't they The Rescuers? It is the titular role, and yet they feel like weird side characters. I I'd complain about this mouse trying to form a wedge in their relationship, except he really doesn't do that, which I guess could be considered a neat subversion, but I think it's more of a case of the movie not devoting enough time to their relationship or characters whatsoever. I think they got like 2 scenes where the guy mouse tries to propose but fails. 2 scenes is not equal a running gag, guys. This kid is the dumbest person alive. It's very clear that despite none of this being personal, the villain is willing to kill the kid if he needs to. He even threatened to do so on multiple occasions. But now the eagle he's after is allegedly dead, so he lets the kids go, but then tells him he should go check on the eggs. And at this point, I figured he was lying about the eagle dying just so that the kid who refused to talk about the bird would go after the eggs so that the villain could chase him and find the eagle himself. It is literally the most obvious thing in the world. Then this dumbass goes straight to where the eggs are and the villain follows him in this loud-ass tank. It is here, at the very end of the movie, where the titular characters finally impact the plot by telling the kid the villain followed him here. Oh, there's a big surprise. God, this movie is just unbearably stupid. It has enough good elements to make it good overall, but I just feel like it doesn't belong in the era it's in. If you ask me, it doesn't count as a Renaissance film. Release dates be damned. It feels so archaic, especially compared to the movie came out the year before, and I seriously doubt I will think about it ever again. Tarzan is kind of frustrating to talk about. It's a good movie, but it kind of disgusts me on a personal level. I feel like all the pieces were there for a really powerful, compelling, top-tier Disney experience, but the movie really dropped the ball in a lot of key areas. Right off the bat, the fact that this film yeets the whole musical format away just to have Phil Collins semi-narrate the emotions of each scene with his weird-ass songs was just kind of mind-boggling. The songs are actually pretty good, but still, why did it have to be this way? All the songs ended up feeling samey, and the emotion of each scene they appeared in kind of fell flat for me as a result. Maybe if they got the characters to sing half of them so we wouldn't have to hear the booming voice of Phil Collins echoing through the jungle, that could have worked a little better. But they just blend together into this tepid pulp. You're telling me You'll Be in My Heart works better as a song by a disembodied voice than it would have if Kala sang it? What a joke. There's a scene where all the animals find a bunch of human artifacts and they start using them as musical instruments. And I thought, oh my god, are we going to have a musical number? Is this finally going to be like a real Disney movie? But no, they just scat and make noise and that's it. It's so painfully obvious that there was going to be a song in this scene. But I guess Disney said, nah, kids these days don't like musicals anymore. Let's just have Phil Collins sing everything. Schaefer-Ellis Productions made a great Disney ranking, and in his Tarzan segment, he perfectly encapsulates my feelings on the matter. Check it out if you want more detail. And I wish I could say that that's the most disappointing aspect of Tarzan, but actually, yeah, that is the most disappointing aspect. But there's other disappointing things too. Despite Phil's best efforts, the opening is really compelling. Seeing a gorilla family lose their baby to a cheetah and then seeing the mother rescue Tarzan, who lost his parents to the same cheetah, this rescue is tense, exciting, and done without any words. It made me wish the animals would continue without talking and the emotion on their faces would progress the narrative, kind of like Spirit. But nah, they talk. Which is just great because we're introduced to the most annoying character in any of the movies on this list, Turk. I hate Turk with every fiber of my being. She's a blatant ripoff of Timon without any of the charm or story relevance. Also, this elephant is just a poor man's Pumbaa. Fortunately, they're not in the movie that much. It's more about Tarzan trying to prove himself to his father, who hates him because he's not an ape, and him learning to become human when he meets Jane. That stuff is actually pretty compelling. In addition, the action is really something to behold. Anytime there's a chase or fight scene, it's something special. But the movie gets dragged down again by this boring-ass hunter villain guy. They could have had a great villain on their hands with the cheetah who killed Tarzan's parents, but that thing is disposed of pretty quickly for some reason. And now we've got to deal with Clayton and his tired, predictable motivations. I mean, at least Radcliffe was ironically enjoyable, but Clayton has nothing cool about him whatsoever.
except his death scene. I genuinely can't believe Disney got away with that. Speaking of death scenes, though, the dumbest thing about this movie is Tarzan's adoptive father dying after the climax and telling Tarzan that he was wrong, that Tarzan was his son all along. I'm sorry, that's even faker than the ending of Inside Out 2. Zugor was right. He died because of the humans Tarzan trusted and embraced. He has never shown a shred of decency to Tarzan in the entire film until now. In reality, he should have said, I told you those humans were dangerous. Sometimes people don't make emotional reconciliations with estranged parents right before their death. It's time you stop living in a fairy tale, Disney. Or if you are going to live in a fairy tale, give me the musical numbers that define your fairy tales for so long. Whatever. The point is, Tarzan is a mixed bag that I don't have much interest in revisiting anytime soon. The emotional beats are strong and some of the characters are solid, but the slapstick and comedy fall flat, the villain is lame, and the lack of traditional Disney songs really drags this one down for me. Still enjoyable and good overall, just not consistent enough to justify a rewatch.
I'm not overly attached to Aladdin. I don't know, Jasmine never really clicked with me. I think she has good chemistry with Aladdin, and I love the whole Do You Trust Me motif, but individually, she's not the most compelling protagonist. Jafar isn't really anything special at first, and neither is the movie really. I think the whole Chosen One narrative is really contrived here. Sure, it's over within the first act, but still, why is Aladdin, of all people, the only one who fits this diamond in the rough criteria? That's kind of weird. Also, the CG in the Cave of Wonders escape, that's gonna be a yikes for me, man. Then we meet the genie. Okay, this is great now. Aladdin gets a lot better as it goes along, mostly due to the impeccable late Robin Williams being a perfect fit for the role of this hilarious, all-powerful impressionist. He has a nice emotional core to his character in addition to being tremendously funny. And those songs, holy crap. Friend Like Me makes an amazing case for animation being the supreme form of visual storytelling. One Jump Ahead is a ton of fun. Prince Ali is a jam. But then there's A Whole New World, which, in my opinion, is the most gorgeous duet ever written for a musical. It's flawless in every way. Watching Aladdin and Jasmine soar across the stars and visit all sorts of different landmarks from Hercules World to Mulan World to even Prince of Egypt World. It's tremendous from a lyrical, orchestral, visual, musical, every possible standpoint. It's legitimately one of my top 10 favorite scenes in film history, and I can gush about it for ages. Anyway, all this greatness leads to a sensational climax where Jafar goes from a moderately decent villain to holy crap, this guy's unhinged and I love it. His crazy sorcery tricks, his hilarious bad puns, his absolute madness, and the fact that Aladdin beats him by outsmarting him rather than by using brute force? What a ride! Easily one of the best final battles in any Disney film. Bottom line is, I really like this movie, just not quite as much as some of the other Renaissance films when considering the overall package. But a lot of the individual elements here are some of my favorite portions of any Disney film, and as a result, I can't be too hard on this movie. It's a really fun time with some absolutely transcendent moments, and I would highly recommend it.
I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. I'm a man.
Mulan is kind of a weird film to talk about. I love it, but I can't shake the feeling that something's missing from it. Maybe it's the fact that there's considerably less songs in the typical Disney movie and not all of them are top tier. Maybe it's the fact that the villain, while menacing, doesn't really have any connection to the hero. He doesn't know her at all, so his presence in the film is kind of limp, even though he murders a ton of people. The comedy is also kind of hit or miss. Mostly, Mushu is extremely funny, but sometimes he doesn't work for me at all. I mean, we're basically just watching Donkey, and I don't know if he fits the tone of a Disney film as much as he does the tone of a Shrek movie. Oh, and you know what pisses me off? Mulan didn't fail with the matchmaker through any fault of her own. It was a stupid cricket in the coffee. If the grandmother hadn't stuck that cricket up Mulan's ass, none of this would have happened. Even so, this movie's visually neat, it's a very well-told story, the side characters are great, Mulan's a really compelling protagonist, and goddammit, they didn't have to go that hard on I'll make a man out of you. But they did, and I'm so happy about that. I also love how a movie about a woman becoming the best hero in the land and proving all the men wrong didn't turn into a self-congratulatory circle jerk.
which modern Disney certainly would have turned it into. But Mulan is a very grounded story that doesn't dwell on gender issues too much, outside of the literal law that she'll be killed if they find out she's a woman. This movie is just overall really confident in the strong female character it's named after, and it shows us how strong she is rather than telling us, which works wonders. It's one of the reasons I love Moana so much, and also one of the reasons I hate Captain Marvel. And dude, that ending when Mulan presents the gifts from the Emperor to her father and he just tosses them aside and hugs her, that gets me every time. Overall, a great movie, even if it's kind of missing that extra element that makes it come together perfectly. Usually I say that about merely good movies, but this is one of those times where the bar is set so high by the rest of these movies that a masterpiece that's great for what it is still isn't an all-time favorite of mine because of the great competition it has. I can be nitpicky towards this movie's flaws more than the other Renaissance films, but it's still a great time and a well-told story.
You need to promise us that you'll never sneak off to the surface again.
Holy crap, I don't remember The Little Mermaid being this good. Not only are the songs vibrant and alive, not only is the underwater world magical, not only are the side characters endearing as all heck, not only is the villain such a delightfully bad bitch, but Ariel is just such a great central protagonist. Believe me, I've heard the complaints. Oh, she gives up her voice and free will for a man. She's so whiny and a terrible character, and so on and so forth. Ha, that's where you're wrong, my man. Ariel is established early on to be completely fascinated with the human world and all of its relics. Eric wasn't even the tipping point to get her to see Ursula. That was King Triton destroying all of her artifacts. She feels misunderstood and like she doesn't belong. Ursula is the one who goes on and on about Eric, but Ariel actually has a lot of different intersecting motivations for wanting to become human. She's a really compelling, fun protagonist and one of my favorite Disney princesses. But she's not the only aspect of this film I love. The pacing is perfect. Every scene advances either the story or a character's motivations. The songs are just phenomenal. Under the Sea and Kiss the Girl are practically flawless. Poor Unfortunate Souls is a little slow to start, but that bombastic ending makes up for it. Part of Your World is a gorgeous I Want song. Also, the instrumental version of Under the Sea is one of the most beautiful sounds I've ever heard in a motion picture. The cinematography is stunning. There's some great jokes, vibrant colors, absolutely incredible animation. It's pretty easy to tell why this movie was such a gigantic, influential hit. This is just everything I want in a musical and more. I could rewatch it 1,000,000 times and never get tired of it. And keep in mind, this is only number 5 on the list. Yeah, when I said these were some of my all-time favorite movies, I wasn't kidding. Guys, I would love to put this film at number 1 and prove childhood me wrong. I would love to say that this is the best overall package Disney has ever put out and that it deserves all the accolades and acclaim in the world. But this movie is a mess. Let's get the bad stuff out of the way. First, a common misconception is that Timon and Pumbaa are an annoying duo that are exclusively responsible for this movie's tonal problems. Not true, for 2 reasons. First, even if it's a weird pacing choice on the movie's end to have Simba spend so much time with them and their usage makes the tone worse, I wouldn't say they're bad characters. Not all their jokes land, but overall, they're still iconic for what they are. I know it's weird to say that when they're my biggest problem with the movie, but that's the thing. They're a problem because they don't fit what the movie is going for tonally, but if you just look at them as individual characters in a separate tone and story, and detach them from the tone of the rest of the movie, they're not the worst comic reliefs. They're actually pretty good at being parents and friends for Simba to be raised by. It's these dumbass slapstick moments that ruin everything about the comedy because they are so annoying and immature and unpleasant, and I can't do this anymore. Let's just move on. Second, this movie is a complete tonal mess even without the help of Timon and Pumbaa. It did the fool's part all by itself with some truly embarrassing sequences during I Just Can't Wait to Be King and even the final battle. This babyish slapstick is wedged in between some truly emotional and heavy scenes, and it gives me complete and utter whiplash. Also, Zazu gets on my nerves, sorry not sorry. But Timon and Pumbaa do take the crown for the worst scene in the movie, and probably my least favorite song in Disney history. Hakuna Matata is so awful. It's every bit the tonal disaster that Fixer Upper is, but it doesn't even have the courtesy of being catchy. It's all about teaching Simba that it's okay to run from your problems and start a new life. But it has no story relevance. It's just annoying filler that drags down the movie hard. But yeah, that's everything I hate about the movie. So now let's move on to the good stuff. Everything else. The soundtrack, best in a Disney movie easily, but only once you surgically remove Hakuna Matata. It's like the appendix. It's useless, and once it bursts, it kind of kills the entire experience. But The Circle of Life, best opening of any Disney movie. Yeah, I said it. Be prepared, the best villain song by far. I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Gorgeous emotional ballads that show the sheer artistic power of this movie. Nala just wants to reconnect with her best friend from childhood, and the soothing music fits the scene perfectly. And Simba just wants to become king and have a more interesting life. And he gets a chance to become king, only to run away from it because he's too scared to deal with his grief and face his mistakes, until he learns the value of facing your past as a way to heal and realize that it doesn't define who he is now. Only while writing the script did I realize how similar this arc is to Kung Fu Panda 2. Anyway, yeah, the characters are great. The plights of Simba and Nala really carry the story a long way. Plus, Scar is still the best Disney villain. If Scar isn't the most evil-ass motherfucker in the entire Disney pantheon, I don't know who is. He's tremendously fun to watch, and he still has more depth than the typical Disney baddie. There's just so much to love here. The vibrancy of Africa, the epic tribal chanting, the stunning molding of traditional and CG animation to give Africa its grand feel. Before the misstep that was Pocahontas, this was an epic way to go out. It's just brought down a bit by the tonal problems that really didn't have to be there. I prefer Black Panther. It fixes all the issues and it's a more compelling piece of art. But this movie deserves credit for its ambition, even if not all of it panned out in the end. I really do wish I could rank this higher in good conscience, because the best parts of this movie are straight up the best parts of Disney in general. I respect this movie more than I like it, and I already like it a whole lot. So that's a great deal of respect, and if I were this movie, I'd be really proud. Yeah, I know. I'm shocked too. Hercules is just so energetic, so hilarious, so compelling, so visually distinct, so musically distinct, and just so flat out fun that I ended up ranking it way higher than I expected. It's not because I like Greek food, guys, believe me. It's the fact that this movie is simply the complete package. It's the first Disney movie that feels like it was built from the ground up around the music. Like if you took out the songs out of Little Mermaid or Aladdin, you'd have a largely unchanged narrative. It'd be way less good, mind you, but in theory, these stories could function independent of their music. But the story of Hercules is framed around the Muses, who, unlike Phil Collins, fit the setting perfectly and add some amazing gospel flair, which is an inspired choice since this movie is about gods and such. In fact, let's talk about all the other things that fit the movie really well. FYI, I'm about to throw so much at you that you'll never be able to get up again. Like I said, the musical style is gospel, which works wonders for the theme of the story and setting. The designer of this movie is Gerald Scarfe. This is an inspired choice because his designs are so distinct compared to every previous Disney movie. The jagged edges on the characters and the abominable monsters just pop and look incredible. The look and tone of this movie is going to be Las Vegas. Nice. It really highlights Hercules becoming sort of a superficial hero rather than a true one, which is a conflict within the story. Hercules is pretty interesting. His plot line about not belonging is handled differently from other Disney protagonists. Ariel, Quasimodo, Aladdin, Pocahontas, etc. want something different out of life, so their dreams and aspirations make sense. We all want a little more beyond what we have to spice up our lives, but they still have friends and a role in society and people who respect them. Hercules doesn't have that. He has his parents, but everyone else hates him for his clumsiness, which makes sense because he can't control his literal godlike strength. I normally hate clumsiness as an excuse for why someone doesn't belong, but it's a natural fit here. This builds into one of the most inspiring I Want songs in the Disney pantheon, with Go the Distance being a beautiful ballad that I can't get out of my head. Meg is sassy, but there's so much more to her than that. She's probably my favorite female character in any Disney movie, being a totally unique, world-weary, reluctant servant to the villain. A dynamic we've never really gotten from Disney before. I really believe the romance, and I love the conflict she has about not wanting to hurt Hercules. Anyway, moving on to Danny DeVito. He brings Phil to life in such a delightful manner. He's not some shoehorned comic relief. He's kind of the emotional core of the story. Dude, when you see that constellation at the end and that guy says that's Phil's boy, you're definitely heartless if you don't get moved by that at least a little. Oh yeah, and Hades rules. Easily one of the best Disney villains ever. He's so witty and quotable yet menacing when he needs to be, and all the other side characters are just totally awesome. Even though their first awkward scene had me worried, Pain and Panic actually have a ton of hilarious moments. I love what a booming presence Zeus has. I really enjoy those asshole town people. Hermes has like 5 lines, and yet I still distinctly remember him. The songs, I remember every single one. There is not a single bad track in this movie. From the intricately constructed Gospel Truth, to Danny DeVito's training romp One Last Hope, to the absolute banger Zero to Hero, to the song that practically reinvented Disney songs themselves because of how iconic it is, I Won't Say I'm in Love. My only real issue is that the lighthearted tone doesn't really correlate to a compelling climax, which itself is very poorly staged. I mean, the whole conceit of the movie is that Hercules is destined to defeat Hades when he tries to take over Olympus, but Hercules really doesn't do that. Hades chains everyone in Olympus up with a Titan's help, but Hercules just kind of flies in and breaks the chain, so suddenly everyone is totally capable of beating the Titans, even though they weren't like 5 minutes ago. It's real dumb. Whatever, the second climax is way better, since this movie has 2 climaxes. Also, Hercules is able to touch the River of Death with his hand by bending down, but then he's gotta dive in from a pretty steep height. Honestly, this entire climax is just kind of bonkers, but in a good way. It's certainly not perfect, but it has everything I look for in a Disney movie. Unique and expressive animation, phenomenal songs, a villain who's intimidating, a hero who's likable, a romance you believe, actual suspense and stakes in the second climax. Yeah, this is my jam. It's just that fun, and something I never get tired of revisiting.
Tale as old as time.
Beauty and the Beast is an unprecedented cinematic achievement that can never be replicated. So why even try? Just enjoy the movie we got, come on. Every frame of this film screams iconic. From the magnificent Tale as Old as Time sequence to the visceral, intense march into the Beast's castle sequence, the emotions conveyed through simple facial expressions, vibrant colors, expressive movement, all the things that can only be encapsulated by animation are simply astounding. This is a rich, mature, boundary-pushing, gorgeously styled story that flows perfectly, hits hard dramatically, offers a ton of great comedy as a counterbalance, and stands the test of time as the crowning achievement of a studio at the top of their game. I simply don't know what I could possibly say about this film that hasn't already been said. No, seriously, you guys got anything? I'm kind of at a loss for words. It's just so grand in every way. It doesn't feel too cartoonish or slapsticky, which is a trap some of the other films can fall into on occasion. Every character is iconic in their own way. Every setting beautiful, every song engaging, every emotional beat satisfying. The worst song in the movie, Belle, is still catchy as hell and integral plot-wise, and the others are absolutely pitch perfect. Unlike Mulan, which had very few songs and only one real standout, this movie has such phenomenal music that the low song count is totally fine. Oh, speaking of music, I'm just going to come out and say it. Tale as Old as Time is the single best song I've ever heard in a Disney movie. And I've heard some great ones, mind you, but this one is absolutely stunning. Keep in mind, I don't throw best of all time around casually. It's usually my favorite because objectivity in film is really hard. But I stand by this. Tale as Old as Time is the best song Disney has ever written. Somehow, this was the only Disney movie that got nominated for Best Picture, but if we gotta pick just one, then I can't argue with this one. The songs enhance the grand feel of every scene, making for such compelling action, introspection, lightheartedness, and tragedy. It isn't solely responsible for this movie's artistic merit, but it's a very big part of it, and it's the centerpiece for one of the greatest scenes in film history, a scene I physically cannot get through without chills or sobbing. I mentioned that A Whole New World was in my top 10 favorite movie scenes of all time. This is my top 3. I don't think I can ever express its magnificence with words. The beautiful dancing choreography, which turns into the object character singing a lovely song that perfectly expresses the strangeness and beauty of this romance as the beast finally learns to love for the first time, as the music swells. Dude, it's unbelievable. You know it's unbelievable. I don't need to tell you. Literally the only problem I have with this movie is the fact that they cut the Human Again song. Otherwise, this is the most iconic Disney movie of all time. How can I not adore it? And yet, Disney has already made something even better. Even before I watched it, I always knew there was something special about The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Everything about it was captivating in my 13-year-old brain, from the songs to the visuals to the character relationships, and it just kept getting better as the months went on since I watched it. This is Disney's magnum opus. It's not as grand as Beauty and the Beast, but it's practically perfect in every way. The friendship between Quasimodo and Esmeralda, which seems impossible to achieve from the outset based on their differences, progresses in such a natural, well-paced, intelligent manner. Their connection becomes apparent after Quasimodo helps her escape, and from there, they discover their similarities as outcasts. And despite having no romantic connection with each other, their friendship feels genuine. Quasimodo learns new things about the world, and with Esmeralda's help, he comes to an understanding about the complexities of real life. It's a lot like Tangled, but even better fleshed out and developed. Everything is so well set up for the most believable friendship Disney has ever produced to bloom in the most beautiful manner possible. On top of that, the side characters are fantastic, the bell tower is so intricately designed, the songs are wonderful and express the desires of each character expertly. The opening song gives me life. It is musical theater incarnate, setting the stage for everything and introducing us to the main character, setting, and antagonist perfectly. A Guy Like You warms us up to the bell tower and makes it feel like home after all the disturbing imagery we just witnessed. Frollo's influence over Paris is illustrated through all the chaos he creates at the Feast of Fools. And, oh yeah, as if it wasn't good enough that this movie gives us the most thematically rich story ever told, we also get the supreme meme dispensary that is Esmeralda. My favorite works of fiction are the ones that can flawlessly tell a story and hit you hard with emotional, powerful moments while also having that extra fun factor to balance things out and not feel too depressing or boring. It's why I love The Fabelmans. Intricate, perfect narrative, and Seth Rogen is just hilarious to watch. It's why Coco is kind of my favorite thing on planet Earth. Dark, mature, subtle story with skeleton vibing, family bickering, quirky fun. And here, not only do we get the same amount of zaniness and energy that the other Disney movies have in the form of the gargoyles, but we have a rich, mature, expertly told narrative where every narrative beat and character action is believable. From Quasimodo's sorrow that he can't go out and enjoy life outside his tower, to Frollo's continuously more menacing demeanor, to Quasimodo's acceptance of the fact that he and Esmeralda are merely friends and that she's dating Phoebus because he values her happiness over his romantic connections, because he has a heart. Oh my God, it's just beautiful. The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a momentous achievement and perhaps the greatest Disney movie I've ever seen. It's magnificent and easily the highlight of the entire Disney pantheon. Every time I witness the Hellfire sequence and see the amazing visuals, vocals, lyrics, and Frollo's growing energy and malice, as this gorgeous song echoes through this absolutely mesmerizing bell tower, I kind of forget I'm watching a movie. It shouldn't be possible to capture a moment this stunningly beautiful on film. But they did. As long as I live, this sequence and this entire movie will always hold the key to my heart.